Antarctica Hell, the frozen edge of human survival. In this place, nature does not forgive. It only watches to see who endures. The year was 1914, and the world still pulsed with the restless heartbeat of discovery. Maps were nearly complete, yet one vast, icy void remained: Antarctica, the coldest, windiest, most desolate continent on Earth. To most, it was a blank spot at the bottom of the world, a frozen hell where nothing human belonged. But for one man, Sir Ernest Shackleton, it was the final frontier, a place where glory waited for those brave or foolish enough to reach for it. This is the true story of one of the greatest survival sagas in human history, a tale of unimaginable cold, despair, loyalty.
In August 1914, as Europe plunged into the First World War, Shackleton stood on the deck of the ship Endurance, staring toward the gray horizon of the South Atlantic. His goal was audacious: to be the first man to cross the entire Antarctic continent, from one coast to the other, on foot. His crew, 28 men, chosen for courage, skill, and humor, had answered the call to adventure. They came from England, Scotland, Ireland, New Zealand, and even the United States. Some were scientists, others sailors, and one, Frank Hurley, an Australian, was there to capture it all on film. They believed this expedition would make history. They were right, though not in the way they expected. The ship, Endurance, was a masterpiece of wooden engineering, built to withstand crushing polar ice, yet elegant as a sailing vessel. She was named after Shackleton's family motto, "By endurance we conquer." But nothing could have prepared them for what awaited beyond the last line of human civilization. By December 1914, Endurance reached the edges of the Weddell Sea, a place of surreal beauty and deadly deceit. Ice stretched to the horizon like a frozen ocean of shattered glass. The temperature dropped to -40 degrees Celsius. The sea was alive with movement, groaning, shifting, cracking as the ice slowly closed around the ship. On January 18, 1915, the impossible happened. Endurance became trapped. At first, the crew was confident. "The ice will release us," Shackleton said. "It always does." But the Antarctic is a land without mercy. The weeks turned into months. The ship drifted helplessly with the pack ice, locked in an unbreakable grip. They were prisoners of a moving continent of ice. The sun dipped lower each day until it disappeared completely, leaving only a twilight of endless night. Temperatures dropped below -60 degrees Celsius, and the wind screamed at 100 miles per hour. Inside the ship, the men tried to keep their spirits alive. They played football on the ice, organized dog races, even held mock concerts. Shackleton knew morale was as vital as food. He wrote, "A cheerful man is a good man in a crisis." But deep down, they all knew, if the ice didn't release them soon, it would destroy them. On October 27, 1915, after 9 months trapped, the ice finally made its move. A thunderous crack split the silence. The pressure of the shifting pack ice crushed the ship's hull like paper. "The ship is doomed," Shackleton said quietly. They watched in horror as their home, their lifeline, broke apart. The masts splintered, the decks buckled, water and ice poured in through the cracks. By nightfall, Endurance was dying, slowly, painfully, creaking under tons of ice. Shackleton gave the order: abandon ship. They set up camp on the ice itself, a flat white world without trees, rocks, or hope. They salvaged what they could: food, sleds, tents, and 3 lifeboats. As they watched their ship sink beneath the frozen waves, one man muttered, "She was our only home." The temperature was minus 30 F. The nearest land was over 350 miles away. Now it was not about glory, it was about survival. The men drifted with the moving ice for months, setting up a camp they called Patience Camp. Their world was a floating prison, an endless plain of snow and silence. They lived off seal meat, penguins, and what little rations remained. The blubber smoke from their fires clung to everything, turning their faces black with soot. Each morning they awoke to frost on their blankets. Ice formed in their beards as they spoke. The dogs howled at night, sensing the despair that grew stronger with every passing day. And yet, Shackleton never let despair take hold. He told his men, "We must go on. We shall come through. I promise you that." His confidence became their lifeline. Then, in March 1916, the ice beneath them began to crack. Their floating camp was breaking apart. They had no choice left. They had to take to the open sea.
The men launched their 3 lifeboats, James Caird, Dudley Docker, and Stancomb Wills, into the freezing waters. The ocean was a nightmare of waves, icebergs, and sleet. Salt water froze in their clothes. Their hands were raw from rowing. For 7 days they battled the sea until they reached a rocky outcrop known as Elephant Island. It was the first solid ground they had stood on in 497 days. They wept as they kissed the frozen shore. But Elephant Island was no paradise. It was barren, storm-swept, and far from any shipping route. No one would ever find them there. If they wanted to live, someone had to go for help. Shackleton chose 5 men, including navigator Frank Worsley and carpenter Harry McNish, to accompany him. They would sail the James Caird, a 22-foot open lifeboat, 800 miles across the most dangerous ocean on Earth, to South Georgia Island, where a whaling station still operated. It was an impossible journey. They built up the boat with scraps of wood and canvas, reinforced it with tar, and stocked it with rations for a few weeks. On April 24, 1916, they set sail. The rest of the men watched as their leader disappeared into the fog.
Shackleton immediately organized a rescue mission. The first attempt failed. The ice turned back their ships. The second and third failed too. Winter was returning. Time was running out. Finally, on August 30, 1916, aboard the Chilean steamer Yelcho, Shackleton broke through the ice. As they approached Elephant Island, he saw the tiny camp, men running to the shore, waving frantically. He counted them. "Are you all well?" Shackleton shouted. "All safe, all well," came the reply. Every one of the 28 men had survived. When they returned to civilization, Europe was in the midst of the Great War. The newspapers called Shackleton's story the miracle of the ice. But those who had lived it called Antarctica what it truly was: hell on Earth. Temperatures that burned the skin like fire, winds that howled like demons, hunger that hollowed the soul. Yet somehow, in that frozen void, Shackleton and his men found something greater than survival. They found the limits of human spirit, and then went beyond them. Frank Wild, Shackleton's second-in-command, once said, When things were at their blackest, he would just say, "We'll get through this." And somehow, we did. Sir Ernest Shackleton returned to Antarctica once more in 1922. On that final voyage, he died of a heart attack aboard his ship, Quest, near South Georgia, the same island that had saved him years before. He was buried there, beneath the cold gray stones, facing the south. His grave still stands as a monument to courage beyond comprehension. Today, more than a century later, the name Endurance has risen again. In 2022, a research team discovered the ship's wreck, perfectly preserved 10,000 feet below the icy Weddell Sea. The name Endurance still glows on her stern, as if untouched by time. It was as though Antarctica itself had kept the ship, frozen in tribute to those who dared to challenge it. The story of Shackleton and his men is not just about survival, it's about leadership, loyalty, and the strength of the human will. In a place where nature strips everything away, comfort, warmth, even hope, they proved that character is what remains when all else is gone. When the world feels cold and impossible, remember the men of the Endurance. They entered hell and came back alive.